Honestly, and one of the best parts about being fractional is I feel, to your point of freedom, I feel so free to say what I mean and to mean what I say.
Welcome to the Fractional Edge, the turbocharged podcast that's your one-way ticket to unlocking the full potential of your workforce planning. I'm your host, Carol Fraser, a workforce planning whiz, fractional chief human resources officer, and a CEO who's been around the block and probably tripped over a few HR manuals along the way. With over 4 successful ventures under my belt, I've mastered the art of navigating the challenges faced by small and medium-sized businesses like yours. Get ready to dive deep into the exhilarating world of fractional executive staffing strategies, where every twist and turn is designed to turbocharge your business success and leave you ready to supercharge your company. From hilarious success stories to side-splitting strategies, we've got the inside scoop to optimize your business and keep you grinning from ear to ear. Let's rev up those engines and dive headfirst into the fast lane of business brilliance.
Hello and welcome to the Fractional Edge podcast. My name is Carol Fraser. I am a fractional CHRO and I am your host for today's podcast. Remember, fractional executives are really going to help your organization with the competitive edge. So if you consider all of the executives or all the staff that you might need to make your company work and to really excel, you should really be considering fractional executives as part of your workforce planning. Today, I have Heather with me, and she is a fractional CMO. So Heather, please introduce yourself to our audience.
Yes. Hey, and thanks for having me. And yeah, I am a fractional CMO, and I've spent 22 years in corporate gathering all of my experience and expertise working for everything from Fortune 50 companies with over 100,000 employees to small nonprofit associations that had about 20 staff. I've had a lot of different various industry experience, from highly technical B2B companies to 24/7 home shopping retail, working with global brands, and also getting experience with companies with various distribution models and channels. And so really my experience in corporate was this masterclass in learning how to develop marketing strategy, build effective teams, driving results with all sorts of budgets, or sometimes not so much budgets, and experience leading teams of many different sizes, which is now all of the value that I get to deliver to small businesses through the work that I do when it comes to fractional. And I think my area of magic is sort of this mix of strategic and tactical that I provide. And I've always been really good about, I've got the big picture, but then I really understand the tactics that need to be executed to really bring that strategy to life. And so kind of using both sides of the brain to help small businesses, which is really helpful when it comes to fractional because it's one resource doing a lot of different roles.
That's a mouthful. Jesus Christ. I've learned through the podcast, marketing can be lots of different specialties, whether it be brand or product or overall company strategy. Give our listeners an idea of maybe you've had a chance to kind of go breadth and depth with any one of those. And then where have you seen the biggest impact that you've been able to bring to some of your fractional clients? Because it's such a big department.
It is. I mean, marketing is the bridge that connects a company to its customer. And that is many things. It's an email signature. It's a social channel. It is the content that goes on a blog. It is what your employees think of your brand because it's the experience that they're getting within an organization. So it's so big. And honestly, that's why I love it. Marketing has so many different facets. And I think that really, I am sort of a generalist in that I can do digital, I can do content, I can do brand. And really, I think where I shine is that sort of marketing foundational 101. So I'm also an adjunct professor at a college here in Minneapolis. And so that 101, we need to do the basics well. I don't even want to talk to you about a specific tactic on a social channel until we know, okay, what's the industry? What are the trends? Who are our competitors? Who is our target market? Who do we want to service and add value to? Beyond that, what is our unique value prop? How are we talking about our services. And so really getting those foundational elements are so, so important, because then we can talk about where do we want to show up in terms of channels and what is our tone of voice. But until you really understand foundationally how you add value, why you're different, and how does that matter, then nothing else is going to be as powerful.
That is, when you think about big to small companies, and we'll get back to the fact that you're an adjunct professor just a second, because I had that on my list. When you think that you have worked with these Fortune 50s as well as these small nonprofits, where are there similarities and where are there major differences? And how, as a fractional, do you kind of envelop all of your knowledge to support your clients?
Yeah, I mean, the differences are always going to be, you got nicer equipment, it's the budgets. When I was working for larger companies, you just have money and you can spend it trying different things, and you don't appreciate those budgets till you get to a small company where you have a fraction of that and you're like, okay, I got to be scrappy. But then that teaches you that there is a lot you can do even when you don't have a big budget. So what doesn't change is the fundamentals of marketing. We still have a target audience. We still have to figure out how to connect to them in different ways. Budgets may look different, but what you're trying to achieve, whether it's driving brand awareness or driving more engagement, those components still stay the same. And then, the amount of money, typically that is the thing that changes. And I actually like a smaller budget sometimes because it does force you to be a little bit more creative and innovative. And now in the world of AI, what I love about AI is that it does level the playing field for a lot of small businesses to operate as if they have a staff of 5 when they have a staff of 1. So I think there are some really interesting things happening in the market when it comes to leveling that playing field more. But typically, people power and money power is the difference between the large and the small ones.
Is there a different prioritization when you have those different sizes of organizations? Like, is it in a big company, you're prioritizing maybe paid portions of marketing versus in a small one? Or do you usually go in and say, look, this is the first priority that any company needs to kind of focus on?
You know what? It all starts with the goal. And with a bigger organization, you've got many maybe departments and many different teams, and the digital team has X goals, so they can do paid SEO work or paid ads. Whereas a smaller company, we're just trying to figure out what marketing channels we need to be in. And so we're not even talking about paid just yet. And that is typically what I recommend is let's get the foundation right. Let's find a couple of channels to show up in. Let's see what's working, do more of that. Whereas a larger company, you've got a lot of teams running on all cylinders. So all of that is happening a little bit at a faster clip than a smaller organization where you've got less resources. I'm a big fan of the crawl, walk, run. So let's try some things. Let's see what works. Hit the gas on when we see something working and pull back when we see something not working, because we don't have the resources to burn like a larger organization. And the other thing is, especially if you're fractional going into these businesses, oftentimes I'm the first marketing leader they've ever had. And so I don't want to damage a reputation by pushing too hard. And so I like to build small wins, get their confidence going, and then we can expand.
I want to back up just a little bit because I can't believe I didn't ask this in the first part of it, but you have had the vantage point of that Fortune 50, right? And a lot of people think like, why the heck would she leave something like that and go into something like fractional, like start your own business? What has kind of driven you into this fractional world?
Yeah, I kind of have 2 answers. One is I never really intended to. I was looking for a job in 2021, like I've done. And all of a sudden I was starting to have these conversations with people who wanted to pay me to do marketing and not full time. I didn't even know this was a thing. And after 5 conversations of people willing to pay me money to do marketing for them, I thought, okay, universe, I see you lighting up a different path for me. But I also think that my time at the really big companies, while I had so much fun, I met great people who are still my friends today. I learned so much. I was being suffocated by politics and levels of bureaucracy. And I realized that a box is not where I wanted to be. And that's what I love about fractional is there are no boxes. You help companies however they need to be helped. And it doesn't look like one way for anything. And so that was the other thing. It was like, well, I want to try this. And what about this? Well, that's the paid search team's department. And we'll pass that idea off to them. And it just felt like I was so stuck and I wanted to do more and grow more. And always that meant like, okay, great. Well, when there's an opening on that team, feel free to apply for that position. Whereas now there's no boxes. It's all open road and we get to do what's right and help clients in the best way we know how without any rules.
It is freeing and it allows you to really sit into your magic because you can act on that without having to figure out the maneuvering.
You know what? And you don't even realize how much brain power and space is being occupied by that stuff. Because when I didn't have that anymore, that's when I all of a sudden my creative cylinders were firing and it was like, oh my God, I've got all this energy. I've got all these ideas because I'm not trying to figure out how am I going to have that tough conversation with my boss who I know I offended and now I've got to, or you know what, he knows I had the meeting with this person and he didn't know about that I had the meeting and you don't even realize how much energy is being drained by nonsensical things.
Yeah. And if the fractional movement does anything, hopefully it's starting to shine the light on areas within any organization as an employee of where you don't need to go down that route.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And honestly, and one of the best parts about being fractional is I feel, to your point of freedom, I feel so free to say what I mean and to mean what I say, because I am not vying for a promotion. I'm not looking at somebody else's job or being part of their department. I don't have any game in the political soup. It is just, I can say what I believe and they can accept it or not. And we can have that conversation without any attachment, without any, history or you kind of forget when you're part of an organization, how quickly it becomes the water you swim in. What not to ask or what's going to trigger that person. Or we just had that conversation last week. You can ask the questions because you don't have that same kind of sacred cow attachment to things. And that can provide such a lens of clarity and truth in an unfiltered way.
Preach. Every time I enter a new client, they love the honesty, the new way of viewing their organization.
Yeah.
I recently heard an amazing saying that you can't solve the problem with the brain that created it.
Ooh.
And that's where I think fractionals could really add value because you do end up swimming in the waters and you made me envision like tuna going in that circle,
Yes.
And I'm just like, you don't know how to go, wait a minute, I want to get out of there. And I have an idea. And it's, sometimes the momentum of the norm sometimes doesn't give us the opportunity to show that kind of side. So.
Absolutely. I even think about when I first started at a company, and I tell people to do this all the time. Like when you first started a company, write down all of the questions, write down all the things that need to be fixed and give it a few weeks or months. And all of a sudden you kind of aren't doing that so much anymore and you're just in it. And so this idea of innovation and creativity, you have to work at it a little bit more. Whereas when you're coming from the outside, you're not in the soup every day. It's just easier to ask the question that everyone goes like, I wish I could have asked that question, right?
Yes, there's been a couple of times I've heard you ask questions. And I'm like, God, I wish I could have asked that question.
You just ask it. And you know what? And the beauty is, especially when you're being brought in, everyone knows you want what's best for the outcome. I am here to help the organization, not hurt it. And so again, you remember that I'm on your team. I'm on your team in a little bit of a different way. And sometimes saying the thing that isn't popular or makes people kind of stop and second guess, it is a good thing, but it's really hard to do when you're in meetings with these people day in and day out. So the freedom to say what you mean and mean what you say, that is one that I love it so much.
So you had brought up AI, and as a marketer, it's impacting everybody's roles, but I think the first inkling of people when they think AI is the writing side of it, right? The copywriting side of it, which in many times either falls under creative or it could be within marketing. So, AI is something that's disrupting all industries. So how are you kind of embracing this new way of adding that into the way you work? And how is that benefiting your fractional clients?
Yeah. I mean, I just look at AI as like, I've got an assistant that is very helpful when I tell it what to do. And it kind of alleviates the whole, what is that called? The shitty first draft. AI will do that for you and it gives you a starting point. And I don't use it all the time, but when I feel like, you know what, it is just taking me too long to come up with something, I'm going to go get some help. And even if I ask for headlines for a subject line, for an email, for example, or maybe content or ideas or a spin I could take on something, even if I don't take any of the ideas I get from, let's say, AI, it gives me something more to think about, or there's a nugget, or there's a word that I glom onto. And so, especially in the fractional world, we're kind of left to our own devices. And I'm a team of one. I don't have a team of people that help me. And so having other perspectives and points of view at my fingertips in a way that just makes it easier for me to remove mental blocks. It helps me overcome that creativity speed bump. And really, the shitty first draft is no longer a thing because AI does that for me and I'm off to the races. And so efficiency, productivity, even just data checking, I used it. So you know how Google is, you have to authenticate your domains for all the big email providers now, right? Well, again, I've got my own email system. I've got to figure this out for myself. I'm into the Google console, pulling this data, and there's lines and lines of characters and numbers. And I wasn't sure if it was the same in both consoles. And so I said, hey, is there a difference between these two data sets? And very quickly, ChatGPT said, these are not the same, which then allowed me to very quickly make the decision I needed to make. So using it for different, even somebody said the other day, I had 17 things in my fridge. I put it in ChatGPT and asked it what I could make for dinner. It can be used for good, and it doesn't always have to be for business too. It could be for vacation planning. And so I think if we start thinking of it as an assistant that's there to help, it is actually quite helpful.
It is scary, but I think you're right. I agree with you. It is a benefit if we understand how to utilize it for all those different things. I'm going to try the one with the what's in my refrigerator.
Yeah.
I hadn't even heard that. That's so cool.
Yes. You never know what you would come up with. And I have a friend that used it to create a story time for her kid, during bedtime. It was okay, do we want dinosaurs or do we want cows? And then, then you can read the story. And so there's ways to use technology. And I think part of being the human is discerning when it's appropriate and when you want to preserve the magic of your own creativity. Because there are people who love writing, and their process is, I sit in the room by myself, I light a candle, so don't let AI take your humanity away. But if you don't love writing or you don't love cooking, use it to be a shortcut for the things that you don't love to do to make you more productive and efficient so that we can use our time being humans with the people that we want to spend it with the most.
So smart. So AI is one of those things that is the new thing that you had to learn. How do you as a fractional kind of stay up to speed on everything that's changing in your industry so that you can allow your clients to benefit from it?
Yeah, that struggle is real. And I will say not only a fractional, you have to do that, but as a teacher, I have to know that I am teaching this stuff. So if I am not keeping up on it, so there's a bit of that pressure of, I have got to know this for my students, because if I'm preparing them for what they need to expect in marketing, so I tell them to use, actually we have a discussion, they have discussion assignments, and one of them, I asked them to use ChatGPT and tell me you used it, and maybe how would that have changed your response, or how did you use it to inform your response? Because I want them to start using it, because if they don't, anyone that's not using this stuff is going to get left behind. And so I've got Google alerts set on things like digital marketing trends, AI marketing trends. And so every week when I get the download of articles, that just becomes part of my week of spending an hour a week looking at what's new, what's relevant, listening to podcasts that help you kind of dispel this information in a way that makes it more consumable. I think there's a podcast called Everyday AI, which is pretty good at breaking down what's happening. But you have to seek out that knowledge because it's changing so quickly. And in some ways, it's frustrating because it's changing so quickly, but that means you're never that far behind because you know what? Give it a week and that's old news.
Very good point. And that's what I wanted to, when I said I was going to circle back around to the adjunct, it's got to be tough just to be a teacher nowadays to stay up to snuff. I mean, and I know, and it's funny because I just saw a survey from our college saying, let's talk about AI and do we want to use it in the classroom? And I was like, this is like a 1 year late email because we are using it. And so one thing I did change in my class, typically they have a long paper that's due. So they do a marketing plan and I have them pick a local business and, what do you want to help them with? And they write a paper and they do a presentation. And after kind of all the AI coming out, I eliminated the paper part. And I said, I want it to be, it's going to be all presentation because I want the present to me, show me you understand the facts. You can still use AI to build your PowerPoint and help you with some of the points. But I'm stressing more the importance of in real time, I want you to articulate what you know, what you built, and the marketing plan you put together. So that is a conscious choice I made by eliminating a paper that I felt could have just the easy button with AI. And so now I'm focusing more on like real time feedback and communication. That is very smart. And let's face it, the differentiator is going to be their ability to present in a way where people understand, where it actually makes them think and ask questions of themselves. So kudos for you, Teach.
Yeah, it's a wild world out there, and it can be scary. But I think it's not. The toothpaste cannot go back into the tube. It is out. We have got to learn how to use it. And like everything, use it for good. People will, of course, abuse the system, and we can't let that stop us from using it to make our lives better because ultimately it does.
Yeah, it really does. So talk to me a little bit about some of your past fractional clients and what were some of the big wins that you were able to bring them because they chose to go with fractional?
Yeah, I had one client that really brought me in more as a coach. So there was a marketing manager. They knew that they would be getting more direct reports. There was high potential, but there was no one in the organization to really help kind of shepherd them and teach them because this person was sort of the highest in the marketing department that they could get to. And so they brought me in as kind of hey, you've led teams, you've developed talent. Can you help us with this from a marketing standpoint? Help her prioritize, help her with marketing planning. So that was an interesting one where it was less about doing the marketing planning and more of how do I prepare this person as if she was a direct report of mine so that she's ready for the next step and more direct reports. And so she can have, honest and candid conversations with her team. So that was an interesting one. I've helped organizations through kind of brand refreshes and tweaking their messaging because maybe, it's been 10 years and their value prop has changed, but none of their materials have. One of the big things I do is just helping companies establish marketing strategy. I also do content strategy and social strategy. So I think that the success comes in that it's exactly what a company needs it to be for them. And so this idea of no one or right way to be fractional then opens the box to be, what do you need? You need someone to help your marketing leader improve and be better? Awesome, I can help you with that. You need someone to go through and help you develop content pillars and a content strategy to make sure that your message is resonating in the market? I can do that. You need someone to help you drive brand awareness in the market? And that's what I love about it. It's no one size fits all. You learn what a company needs by asking the right questions. And that's a big part of it is sometimes they think they know what they want. It's like, we just want a website update. Then you start asking questions and it's like, oh man, the foundation of our messaging is off. And actually, we need to spend more time here before we can even do the website piece. So I think that that's the fun of it all is sort of learning, what do they think they need? What do you see them needing? And then bridging that gap through conversation and adding value in a way where they trust you enough to say, I see what you mean. We couldn't just jump into the website redesign. We actually had to do this foundational work first. So the fun and the success is that it can be whatever it needs to be for an organization based on their needs.
The coach thing that you mentioned, do you feel that it's a natural progression to move from a fractional to a coach? In that situation, it sounds like they just brought you in as more of a mentor coach.
Yeah, I do think it's natural, because the other thing I've found is that, especially with the CEO relationship, I very much become this advisor, this confidant, and a bit of a coach for them too, because oftentimes at the CEO position, maybe they have a right hand, but a lot of times they don't with really small organizations. And so even just having someone be a sounding board to their ideas, or they're struggling with one thing, again, I'm not in the day to day, so I can provide a bit of this outside perspective and also be a safe space. So I do find, even though like CMO and the marketing is sort of the expertise I bring, I have found in more cases than not, I'm also like a business coach and advisor to the CEO. And I do think that's a natural place to be. And with all the years of experience that we have, of course, we're going to be able to provide. They've got this challenge. Well, I've worked with 3 other companies that have had that same challenge. Let me tell you how they went through it. And so there's so much more value that we actually provide beyond the functional expertise.
Agreed. And it's half the time they've been such a hamster on a wheel that for them to be able to poke their head out of the wheel is just rare, if at all. And so to be able to bring in that outside perspective, and in such a way, and I'm a big proponent of supporting people in those verticals with people who have been in that seat. I have been a business coach and I've helped people who are outside my vertical, but partly because I've had my own business for 15 years. So I can speak at least from an entrepreneur standpoint, right?
So you've done all the positions.
Sadly, too many hats. But I think actually how you worded it, which is it's a confidant, and it's also, it's a little bit of a, did I make the right choices? Are there alternative choices that I could have made? And just to have that sounding board is really so important for CEOs.
It is. And they can't always say these things to their employees all the time for various reasons. And so the ability to just, so many people are also external processors. The words just need to come out of their mouth and then they get it. And to have someone where we don't have any judgment. We're just there to help. And if you want to use this hour of our conversation not to talk about marketing, you want to tell me about your challenges and you want me to listen, that's cool. Like, and that's actually fun too, because again, there's no boxes.
So you have a third piece of magic where you're an artist and an author. What is this little bit? And tell me how this supports your magic as a CMO.
Yeah. I, again, kind of going back to when we're not bogged down with bureaucracy and things that weigh us down and drain our energy. Part of when I started to find all this creativity, and it was really after COVID lockdown too, because it got me quiet enough to listen to myself. And drawing is something I always loved as a kid. I just got away from it as I got older, and all the important things like board presentations and meeting prep got in the way. And I was just like, I miss drawing. I need to draw again. And so I started drawing, and I started drawing these little birds. Birds are my favorite animal. They're my spirit animal. And it has just led to this most unbelievable journey of I've written 2 children's books. I've got one on the way. I've drawn over 70 birds. And it is a profound source of joy and flow and peace in my life that I just did not have for too long of a time. And so I think when you can unlock other parts of yourself. So there was an artist in me she was in jail. I put her away and I didn't let her out. And so when I let her out, every time we unlock and let out more of who we are, we show up more powerfully in all the ways. And so this does because I'm a happier human. I am more joyful. And when I'm creative in the bird realm, I'm unlocking ideas in other places because it's all just flowing. And so, yeah, I am also on this mission of like, how as humans can we unlock other parts of who we are, because we are all so much more than what we get paid to do and the role we play in our families. And that is typically the 2 buckets that we fill and refill. So this little bird journey has just been the most fun and also unexpected. Again, this was not the plan, but when you start to follow what feels good, what feels right, and also sort of betting on yourself, I just think that like you start to peek outside the matrix, and then you start to realize, I make the rules. You know what I mean? Like we've been living by these constructs of what we were supposed to do and what we should do. And I've for sure lived like all my life based on what I should do because I'm a good girl that does what she's supposed to do. And when you kind of realize, there's no rules, there's lots of ways to make money. There's lots of ways to live your life. And maybe the way that we've been shown isn't the way that works for everyone.
Praise again, preach, because it is too often we get scared, right? We work from that scarcity mindset. We don't take the risks because we don't know what the reward is. And ultimately we stay, like I said, on that hamster wheel because we know what that reward will be. I'll be able to get off. I'll be able to go eat some kibble and drink some water and then get back on the hamster wheel. And today's 5 generations within the workforce require us to do what you've just said, which is how can we get the best out of someone and not just the minimum requirement. And I feel when I'm speaking to clients and prospective clients around workforce planning, and we're really trying to build a job architecture of how many people do you need at what level to screw in your light bulb, we actually now are starting to ask ourselves, now, what kind of values could that particular role espouse that aligns to your company's values, your company's mission? Nobody's really asked that before this because they were looking at the marketplace. Well, my competitor does this, my competitor does this. And now with the 2 new generations that have come into the workforce, we've had to learn how to think differently, how to consider more internal components of a person so that we can build the right workforce.
Yes. And thank God that conversation's happening. And I know other generations think, well, back in my day, I mean, believe me, I was told, suck it up, buttercup more times than but that doesn't mean that was right. I mean, I survived. I did but I just think we're all growing and these younger generations are forcing us to grow in different ways that I think are actually really healthy because for so long, it was just you show up early, you stay late, you dress for the job you want. It was just grind, grind, grind. And they're saying, wait a minute, that's not how I want to live my life because it's more than work. There's a life that I am building. And so I just think that is healthy. I admire that so much. And again, we just continue to grow and evolve and expand. It hurts sometimes, but it hurts because we're growing.
Yes, very much so. Yes. And when we grow, we have to release something. And I try to coach people all the time. When you have to release something, you're going to go through your stages of grief because that was your truth for so long. And now you're probably subconsciously asking yourself, was that wrong? No, yeah. It's evolution.
Yeah. So yes, that's so good. Yeah. That's so good. And it sort of begs the question of everyone to not get too attached to any one thing. Don't let the external, right, kind of control the internal too much. You know who you are. You know what you stand for. That doesn't change. And I think this idea that we are focusing more on the internal, it's just so good for companies because we're kind of bringing the soul back.
Yeah. And remember, there are definitely companies out there that have a very strong soul and they're doing great.
Yes. Yes.
So with the workforce planning, it's interesting. So we've got the fractional as a really good addition to the overall strategy of people. And we've got these multiple generations that are requiring so much more or maybe just different. Marketing has historically been full of creatives, right? It's definitely those people who are willing to say, I'd rather try something different. How have you seen over the last, I'll say 2 years, because I know a lot changed during COVID, but we're kind of coming to, I guess, kind of the newest ways of working. In the last 2 years in the world of marketing and with the fractional clients that you've kind of worked with, how are you seeing workforce planning evolving?
On the marketing side, I think that especially with small organizations, there's still a little bit of this tendency of wanting not necessarily a unicorn, because there's no such thing, but it's, can we get the person that can do email as well as social as well as content? Because that does all sit in the content bucket. But when you really pull those things apart, a true email expert looks very different than a social media expert. And so I still sort of see with small businesses trying to do a little bit too much with one role. And then you think about, well, what if that wasn't a full-time role? And what if they did hire a fractional email expert and a fractional social expert? Because while the realm of marketing, yes, by nature is creative, I consider myself a marketing person and not necessarily a creative in that sense. Like, so you've got your creative department of the people that do graphic design work and they're in Photoshop building all the things. As a marketer, I'm more focused on, okay, what channel do we have the ROI? What does the marketing scorecard look like? So it is kind of more of the data side versus the kind of art creative side. And so I just think that a lot of small orgs are still really trying to do too much with their full-time roles, and this is just on the marketing side. That's not even talking about the ops person who's also doing marketing or the admin who's also doing marketing, which that's not ideal because they probably don't love marketing. And so when you can bring fractional talent and you're letting people use their superpower, operate in their zone of genius where they're the happiest, and that lets your employees that were hired to do admin work or hired to do operations work do what they want to do. And so I feel like I'm kind of like word salading this question a little bit, but I think that this idea that letting people's expertise shine is really important, because while you could have generalists, and that happens in the marketing space, the more you really understand, and this goes with workforce planning, is what do they want to do? Yeah, you are doing all these things, but what lights you up the most? And let's have that conversation. And you might find out that 70% of somebody's job is stuff they actually don't want to do. Isn't that good to know now? Because they could be an amazing employee that you don't want to lose. So how do you find other homes for that 70% or outsource it fractionally so that person can operate in a place that lights them up, which is going to make them happier, better, which benefits your organization?
Yeah, it's we see that a lot in human resources as well, where the bookkeeper or even the assistant controller is doing human resources. And the skills and the kind of way the brain is wired, if you're doing finance, is a very different way than your brain is wired doing human behavior, right? And you're absolutely right. I love the unicorn thing, but one of the things that I've kind of trying to start to coin the word is the Frankencorn.
Ooh,
because
I like
if you
this.
think about the Frankenstein unicorn, yes. Remember, Frankenstein couldn't talk. He walked very oddly. And the idea is that you're trying to slap all of these things into one person, and something's not going to work right.
Yeah, that's so good. I love this. Let's make this a thing. Hashtag Frankencorn.
Hashtag Frankencorn. Oh, okay. So what myths do you want to help our listeners help to dispel that they're thinking in their head, no way is this going to work for me?
Yeah, I think two of them are that you think about bringing a new type of talent onto your team. And a lot of companies think like, I don't have time. I don't have time to onboard them. I don't have time to get them up to speed. Good fractional leaders, that is what we do. We quickly plug in. We quickly assess the situation. We quickly see where we can start adding value. And we can do that without any handholding. So this idea that I don't have time, put that on the shelf. A fractional person is your accelerator and they don't need handholding. And I think the other myth, if somebody doesn't work for your organization, there can be a bit of well, they're not going to care as much. And to that, I would say it's my reputation. And so I care the most about making sure that I'm adding value, you're seeing that value, and that it's working for all parties, because while I don't have your company's logo on me, I've got mine. And that means more to me than anything. And so this idea that if you're not part of the organization as a W-2, that you don't care as much is also a huge myth.
Yeah, you get the benefit of the adeptness of a consultant, because their role is usually to come in a very short period of time and affect change. But you get the dedication of the employee, because as I've said before, every interaction I have with my client, I'm re-interviewing for my role. I'm always looking to ensure, are we continuing to add value? Have we answered your questions? Should we be considering X, Y, and Z? We're the one helping to push that employer and that client further than they thought they ever could because they've got their blinders on. But you're right. I mean, I saw something that, there are certain companies out there who don't like to hire consultants because they don't know what it feels like to truly be an employee. And I think fractionals is the marriage of both. We have the benefit of knowing how to walk in and affect change, but we all come from W-2 lives. So we know what it feels like to be an employee on the ground there.
Yeah. And that is the perfect cross section of we get it. We've been there. And actually, because we've been there is what makes us so good at what we're doing for you now.
So true. Okay, Heather, you are so many things. You are a fractional CMO. You are an artist and an author. You are an adjunct professor. We've talked about so much. What is one of the questions that you wished I would have asked you?
Well, first of all, we are all so many things. I think, and maybe not necessarily a question, but just if somebody out there is thinking about fractional and if they can do it. Here's the thing. We are all so capable, so much more capable than we realize, and nothing is forever. And so if you have an idea and you think this is a path I might enjoy, you owe it to yourself to try. And maybe even with a lot of people do this with their current employers. They might be thinking, I don't know if I want to stay here forever. Talk to them. Would they be open to you working part-time or doing the fractional where you're doing something for them 1 day a week, 2 days a week? Because I just think, again, society gives us one lens on what success is and what life looks like. And it's up to us to figure out what is the life that we want. And if you've thought about, I could work for a company for 1 day a week or 2 days a week. That sounds really interesting. Maybe I would like to pick up my kids from the bus stop every day. You owe it to yourself to pop up, unplug from the matrix so you can plug back into yourself. And I just think it took me so long to start taking risks. And I am so grateful because I think I would still be at corporate had the universe not shined a light on a different path. I would still probably be on the wheel. And that's not necessarily bad. It works for some people, but I just think it is up to each of us to decide how we want to live our lives. And I also think what would people do if social media wasn't a thing? I just think that's an interesting, I think there are dreams in people's hearts, get the RV, drive cross country, learn what, nurse practitioners do if that's something you're passionate about. But I just think we do what's easy and we do what we know is going to bring in a certain amount of income. And at some point in your life, that's not going to be fulfilling enough. So I just think you got to follow those itches, follow those little whispers of your heart. And for me, it really started with having conversations where people were willing to pay me money for marketing. And this has unlocked a whole journey where I realized that the rules are created by me and the rules are created by all of us. And I just think the more we can embrace that, take some risks, bet on yourself, and worst case scenario, just go get a job because we all know how to do that.
And, with the small business owners, small, medium-sized business owners, entrepreneurs, CEOs, founders that listen to the podcast, you had a fire in your belly. You went out and started your company. You got to know that there are people on your team who have fires in their bellies. And if you can better understand their personal motivations and how you can best align those with your goals. And if that means that you have a lot of part-timers who are bringing their best selves to your organization every single day, and you are diminishing your potential for disgruntled employees, you're raising your opportunity for engagement overall. And that is, honestly, we all know the statistics from the COVID world. That's what's going to make sure that your company stays successful for a longer period of time. So as Heather's kind of pointed out, don't kind of think about what it was pre-COVID, because I know that seems to be the point, I will say the stick in the ground and everything going forward has got to be a little bit different. It's okay. And as I mentioned before, let some of that stuff go. Go ahead and go through your stages of grief and understand that that was good for a period of time. But every year, every New Year's Eve, we give ourselves a New Year's Eve resolution. That's because we're always looking to grow. And if you're constantly holding on to what was important back in 2017, you're not understanding what you need to do in 2024.
Yeah, that's so well said. And it comes back to, again, we talked about the humans, treating the humans in your care well, figuring out what lights them up, and also trusting them. A lot of us grew up in environments where trust was not given. And I think that is what some of the younger generations are demanding. Trust that I will do my job. Trust that I will show up and work for you. And that trust kind of goes both ways. And I think the more you can show that you are invested in them as a human, how they get the work done or when they get the work done, I agree. Does it really matter? And so this idea of trust coupled with caring about the people in your care or in your organization, I just think it has to start there. And just like kids can snuff out inauthenticity, people know when you're going through the motions. So you have to mean it. You have to mean it, and you have to let things go. And especially as business owners, that's tough because you start out doing everything and you think, well, I can't trust someone to take that. And mistakes might happen, but guess what? Someone will get it. And mistakes is also how people learn, right? Some of my best leaders, they let me make all the mistakes because you learn and grow.
Success. You learn from failure.
That's right. Failure is fuel. That's exactly right. And so let them hand the reins to someone else. Let them make mistakes. They're not going to burn down the place. They're not going to your company isn't going to lose all its value. Let them make mistakes because they're going to know you trust them and believe in them. They're going to do things that then relieve you to do other things that you want to do, or maybe build that second business. And so this idea of, as things start to grow, you gotta let go and you gotta kind of loosen the grip. And again, what's that phrase about, hiring, hire slow, fire fast? And that's the same in the fractional world. All fractionals aren't created equal. So pick someone, and then if it's not working out, have the conversation. But the right people and and that's what workforce planning is, right? The right people doing the right things with the right skills in the right places at the right time, right? So that you can run your business and it's not running you.
Yeah, exactly. So Heather, how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, well, you can find me on LinkedIn. Because I've got the bird thing and the marketing thing, I'm kind of all over the place. So LinkedIn is kind of there's one me. Otherwise, I've got, birdie stuff on Instagram, and TikTok. And then I've got vogelventure.com is my marketing business. So yeah, you can find me. LinkedIn is probably the best place. And, I really appreciated the time with you, Carol, in this conversation. And I love the work you're doing with, really spreading a different way of having rock star talent on your team. So thank you.
I appreciate that. So thank you all of our listeners for listening to our podcast today. Be sure that you share this episode because Heather said a lot of great things, and be sure that you are subscribing on all of our platforms. And we've just launched our social media, so check us out on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you so much, Heather. Have an awesome day.
You too.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of the Fractional Edge podcast. We hope you had as much fun as we did in unraveling the mysteries of workforce planning and fractional executives. If you're feeling pumped to unleash your competitive edge, don't forget to hit that like button, share with your fellow trailblazers, and subscribe to ensure you never miss out on our electrifying episodes. If you want to dive deeper into the wisdom shared on today's podcast, head over to our website, thefractionaledge.com, where we can help you connect with guests, explore exciting collaboration opportunities, and subscribe to our newsletter. Until next time, keep your business soaring, take care, stay inspired, and we'll see you on our next podcast.